Welcome to the Fear Theory Podcast, brought to you by EFB Advocacy. EFB means excellent for business. I'm joined by my colleagues Adam Belmar and John Easton. We've taken a bit of a break from the Fear Theory Podcast. I was out of town. Adam was out of town. I was out of town again. Congress was out of town. The one man who was not out of town was John Easton, who was working at his post 24/7.
It's good to be here.
And we're glad that he's here. We are rested, tanned, and ready. Well, I'm not really rested. I spend a lot of time with the family, and it's tiring with the kids. But I love the kids, and they're a lot of fun. You've had some nice time in Florida?
Yeah, suntan like this doesn't just, come out of a bottle. You could get in a tanning bed, and I think that would be a lot of fun. But I actually went down to southern Florida and laid this beautiful big body out in the sun and let it get all tanned up.
And you know what? It is tan, and it's rested and ready. And, we will bring up at some point in time later in the future the whole idea of tanning beds. That's a teaser, and we're excited to tease it for you. Theory 1, Trump. Unmanaged, unburdened, unhinged. The president is channeling his inner Frank Sinatra and doing everything his way. This really came clear yesterday at an event at West Virginia, where he had a script that was supposed to kind of talk about his number one accomplishment, tax cuts, and he threw the script up in the air. I've had bosses who've done that before. They've taken the script, talking to the press, and said, this is it. And this is their cry for authenticity, their cry for no longer to be managed. Adam Belmar, does this work?
I think the optics of the president sort of tossing out the script and trying to be more from the heart and shoot from the hip is in line with the president's style. But I have to tell you, a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of energy on the part of White House staff goes into setting up meetings and events like this on important policy topics. So when the president flies all the way out there after months of getting everyone together in the right place at the right time in the right room and then says, screw it, we're not talking about what I brought you here to talk about, no, that doesn't work very well for people. And I think the president needs to show some more respect for folks when they come together to talk about important policy initiatives.
John Easton, the president moved from tax cuts, which is a fairly unifying thing. It's had a good impact on the economy, and talked about Mexican rapists. What's he up to?
I think he's dying for that authenticity, the need to communicate authenticity. To Adam's point, he also likes the laughs. It's almost like the reality TV. It's like something maybe a little unexpected, but when they see it, they love it, the audience. But I saw a clip of this woman in the audience who actually was in tears, thanking him for the tax cuts and saying that she showed up to come to thank him in person for leading on the tax cut issue. And I guess to Adam's point about all the preparations that go into an event like this, I think that part of what he's saying is that, the people behind the president feel it's their job and duty to communicate a very serious message and a very serious policy message. I know the best events that I've been a part of with a U.S. senator have been those that were very carefully orchestrated. Maybe it'd be a panel discussion or it'd be a summit of some sort on a very serious topic to the particular state and really the particular region of that state,
right,
where the community cares very deeply about these issues that were brought to the fore. And let's say a senator, or in this case a president, decides to throw the script up in the air. It can be a little insulting to the people in the audience as well.
No doubt about that, but he doesn't really care about the people in the audience. What he cares about is a bigger political topic, and for him, it seems to me, the political topic is immigration. And he decided to go full-fledged Trump that he ran in the campaign on, and decided, we're not going to. He gave up on DACA. He's blamed the Democrats for DACA, and he's making a big deal out of this caravan coming up through Mexico. He's sending in the National Guard. It seems to me that this was a pretty calculated strategy on this guy. Even if he didn't tell his staff that this immigration thing is the way I'm going to get my people reelected.
Yeah, I feel like the president is, in some ways, very good at being an open book. This is the thing that's on his mind. This has really captured his attention. He's doing other substantive things from the White House, including this move to push the National Guard, not unprecedented, down to the border. And so he decided he was going to flip the script and talk about that. I get it. It is things that people respond to. But I also believe that as you look at 2018 and the upcoming election, that people really do need to continue to hear from the president about the substantive improvements that come from tax reform and the things that he has accomplished. I'll leave it there, Jim.
Well, yeah, and I think that he remembers very clearly about the campaign and
Right.
and what he believes got him elected. And he didn't believe that tax cuts, while it was a good line, that's not what got elected. What got him elected was consistent and methodical discipline on talking about immigration and getting tough on immigration.
Getting tough on immigration and also getting tough on trade, which he also talked a lot about last when we were gone. I mean, the fact is that trade is one of his campaign promises. We're going to now get in a trade war with the Chinese, which, a lot of people, he says we can't lose a trade war with the Chinese because they have such a much bigger trade surplus over us and we're getting killed. And if you talk to economists, they kind of agree with him, although they don't want to agree with him because they think that trade wars are always bad. But we are getting our clocks cleaned, Adam Belmar, by the Chinese. Do you think that this is a smart political strategy for this president?
Yeah, I do think it is a smart strategy. He's definitely, once again, bringing his rhetoric from the campaign and some of the promises that he made about being strict and tough on the trade practices that are hurting us. The problem is that the press, and I'm very anxious to hear what you guys think about this, is calling this a trade war. The reality is it's not a war yet. No shot has been fired.
Right.
It's almost as though, John Easton, that they're talking out loud about the chess moves that they plan to make. We're going to move here, and then they say, well, if you move there, we're going to move here. And now Trump has said, well, we are going to move there, and now we know you're going to move here, and so we're going to add even more. And so we have the first 5 to 6 moves of what could be a trade war well enumerated, and economists are starting to figure out, okay, is this going to hurt us? Is it going to kill us? Who's it going to hurt? And it's about to happen. It hadn't happened yet.
John, is it possible for the United States to lose a trade war with the Chinese?
I guess what's the definition of losing? I mean, I don't. Is it the stock market? Is it jobs? Is it wages? I don't know how you quantify that, but I think what he's doing is what we've seen him do on a number of high level issues. The guy just goes right to almost to the end first, and then everybody scrambles to catch up with him. The media included. In fact, the media foremost. In this, look at Kim Jong-un, a summit with the North Korean leader. Yeah, I accept. And then everybody scrambles to try to figure out if that's even possible. And then Putin. Apparently he's going to meet with Putin at some point here pretty soon. And then everybody scrambles to figure out, what that means. So a little bit the same on trade.
Yeah.
A lot of rhetoric, a lot of hot rhetoric. And then we'll see if a shot is fired.
Let me say, it's interesting that one of the people that the Chinese singled out in this supposed trade war, was soybeans, which is Iowa's one of Iowa's biggest things, and pork, another big Iowa thing. And who's the ambassador to China? Terry Branstad, former governor of Iowa. Right. I thought it was all very interesting. It's all very strategic. It's very, we need to do something. I was reading an article by Fareed Zakaria, who's a, kind of a left-wing journalist, CNN person, kind of an analyst. And he said that Trump's right. The Chinese have been screwing around with us for forever, and we got to do something because otherwise we're going to lose all our jobs to Chinese, and that's not a good position for us to be in anyway. Anyway, any other thoughts on this topic?
No, I just want to emphasize what John Easton just said about this upcoming summit with the North Korean leader Kim Jong-un. Of late, he made a secret train trip to Beijing to have a meeting with President Xi Jinping, and we also know that he's had meetings, not unprecedented, but certainly in the near term, unprecedented, these direct talks with the folks in South Korea. So a lot of actual substantive discussion has happened before we have this summit. And again, we don't know where it is. We don't know exactly when it is, although it's coming soon. It's kind of like the president. Well, I'll have something for you in 2 weeks. Mm-hmm. But I think the president's onto something. I greatly support President Trump and his movement on this and to get people to come together and talk. I just really believe that he's got to consult with folks up on the Hill and with his own party and make sure that he's not flying by the seat of his pants here. This is serious stuff.
Well, and same applies with Syria, where the president says now he wants to pull out troops within a certain amount of time soon. and now once again everybody's trying to catch up to where he is.
All right, let's move on. Theory 2, cabinet affairs. When we last left the program, Sexy Rexy was being replaced by Mike Pompeo, the CIA chief, who was being replaced by Gina Haspel, who was known mostly for being unfairly tinged with the harsh interrogation techniques of the CIA.
Is it unfair? I don't know, actually.
We're not quite
And
sure.
both still need to be confirmed.
Yeah, both still
That's
need to
right.
be confirmed. Over the break, the president fired his VA secretary and replaced him with his personal physician, and then also fired H.R. McMaster and replaced him with John Bolton. John Easton, the current cabinet secretary under the hot seat is EPA Secretary Pruitt. I was walking to our office and I saw a little picture of him talking about his $50 a night
Condo lease?
Airbnb lease, which is typical market rates. But that being said, he's under the hot seat. We do know that this president, when he sees a cabinet secretary under the hot seat, tends to like to fire him because he doesn't like anyone getting more press than he does. Scott, you're the one who did the staycation. Is Pruitt out?
I don't think so. I think he sticks around, and I think for a number of reasons. One, I think the president is very satisfied with his performance so far. I mean, if anything embodies what Trump really wants to do, it probably is what Administrator Pruitt is doing at the EPA, rolling back a lot of regulations that Trump and a lot of others, particularly the Republican Party, think are very burdensome. But I think you have to consider two things that are coming at Pruitt and also the White House. It's obviously critics that are of Pruitt's that are frothing at the mouth for
Right.
him to be thrown out of there because he is that effective and he's making them crazy with opposition. But there's another facet of this, and that's also sort of the insiders who can really damage you in a position like that. And I'm not getting the sense that Scott Pruitt treats people around him all that well, and he doesn't make very good decisions. Again, on the personal level, whether it's flying first class when he doesn't need to, or it's might be screaming through the city, lights blaring in a motorcade, when a cabinet official doesn't really get to do that. Maybe the Pentagon chief, but that's about it. Maybe the Secretary of
If
State.
you want to piss off a lot of commuters, you do that. And then that story gets out, and then people get more angry at you. I would say, John, that one of the things that happens for someone like Scott Pruitt is hated by the left, and they want him out. To your point, he is doing what Trump wants him to do, but Trump also doesn't like a lot of controversy. Adam Belmar, and so I think a lot of this is ginned up by the left. And a lot of it is mistakes made by a guy who doesn't understand how to be a good cabinet secretary.
Well, I think all of that is pretty fair, actually. And I think that Secretary Pruitt is wounded. He's wounded on substance. He's wounded on optics. And his judgment hasn't been all that great of late either in the way that he's personally handled it, including rejecting White House guidance on not doing a Fox News interview. But in that respect, I want to disagree with you in that he's safe because I really feel like he is wounded. But with everything else in the context that Fury put together, all the other Senate confirmations that are already ahead of this in line that are critical, I guess unless he is wounded substantially again and he's completely unviable, the president's probably going to stick with this, if only because he's got to pick and choose his battles with what he can get out of the Senate.
John
right
Easton,
now.
there's been rumors that the president wants to replace him as Attorney General. What do you think of that?
You mean put Scott Pruitt
Yes.
in as AG?
Yes.
It's not happening.
I mean, think about that.
Put me in, coach.
Jeff Sessions, it just is not going anywhere. If you want to see this place really burn, fire the Attorney General.
Could you imagine that confirmation fight?
Yeah.
And how terrible it would be? Not only for the stuff he's done that outrages the left, but all the other stuff that he's done that are just unforced errors.
Yeah, and I think one of the stories that it probably doesn't get written a lot because it really is mundane and isn't very sexy for the average reader is the confirmation process of all the people we just talked about right here. Mitch McConnell, the Senate Majority Leader, has to schedule time. It usually takes a week to get a cabinet secretary through, and that's if the votes are there.
Right.
And McConnell's not going to put a nomination on the docket if the votes aren't there. So we're talking about several. This is the cabinet level nomination, and this isn't nothing to say for all the other spots that need to be confirmed. Underneath these cabinet secretaries, there are hundreds, and they are being blocked weekly. So I would expect the Senate to probably stay in a lot of weekends now to get the time in that's necessary to process these nominations.
Wow, that's a lot of fun.
And it's going to be, if that's the truth, it's going to change the Senate a little bit.
You want to hear something interesting? You mentioned the fact that since our last podcast, President Trump had dismissed via tweet the Veterans Affairs Secretary, a holdover from the Obama administration, Shulkin,
right?
Someone who had very broad bipartisan support, and it was one of the cases where the president held over a Democratic nominee from the previous administration. And so he had some issues too. The fellow that he has nominated to replace him, as you mentioned, his personal physician at the White House, Admiral Ronnie Jackson, he's a wonderful guy. I can tell you this because I know him, and I had a chance to serve alongside him in the Bush administration. He is just a great American, right? He's with the 2nd Marines. He was running a combat surgical hospital near Fallujah back in the early 2000s. Such an amazing sort of American patriot that he was tapped even while he was serving in Iraq to go and serve on this special team at the White House that takes care of American presidents. He served in that role and did a lot of pre-advance work with me for President George W. Bush. He was actually Barack Obama's physician, and has continued to do so for President Trump. I just want people to know this is a really amazing guy. You'd love to spend time with him. Whether or not that makes him qualified to be the head of Veterans Affairs, I honestly don't know, but senators are going to have to get to know him a bit first.
Why Shulkin was an interesting story was because he got into some bad PR for some things that he did personally, and the White House said, you can't go out and defend yourself, and he was pissed about it. Shulkin was really angry about not being able to defend himself, and so this is part of the deal here in Washington. Talk about the swamp. The swamp has some swamp creatures that play dirty. Mm-hmm. They play in the swamp, and they are going after all of the Trump cabinet folks. They did it with, they're doing it with Pruitt. They did it with Shulkin. They're doing it with Ben Carson. You go all down the line, and everyone's been in the hot seat. Rex Tillerson had his own bad press, and a lot of it is for personal spending.
Right.
Some of that personal spending was about at the same as what the Obama folks spent. So there hasn't been a lot of effort to put this all into context. There has been an effort though in putting the Bush or the Trump folks on the hot seat and making them squeam, and the president deciding I'm going to get rid of you because I don't like this bad press.
Yeah, and I just think that it's really difficult. I'm not sure if the president truly understands the consequence of getting rid of somebody. Just the dominoes that fall from that alone that have to be put back together again, how much time that takes to get these through. And I just feel like the number of positions, the confirmable positions that are unfilled in this administration is remarkable, and it is actually a disservice to the American people. Yes, we're always in a political, bloodbath around here, but there was just an article about the presidential caucus, the Democrats who are likely to challenge Trump in 2020, how much they are just reflexively no against all of Trump's nominees. I get it. I get the political objectives there, but part of me just says, do something else.
John, you make a really important point, and that is when you are on The Apprentice, it's easy to fire people because you don't have to hire someone to replace them. But in the real world, especially when you're running a big government, if you're going to fire someone, you need to hire someone, and that takes up a lot of time, and the president doesn't have that much time left in this first term before the midterms happen.
And he has a party that's so reflexively against him filling those positions that it's actually doubly difficult.
Right. Theory 3, tech on the hot seat. So we have two of the biggest firms in the world, Amazon and Facebook, and they're both facing pressure from Washington quarters. Amazon, which owns the Washington Post, has been under the Twitter glare of President Trump, who hates them and has spoken out against them and talked a variety of ways how he's going to punish them. And it had an impact on their stock. We'll see if that sticks around or not. And then you have Facebook, who has issues that revolve around the campaign, and the story that came out about Cambridge Analytics, a firm that was used by the Trump folks to data mine, and now they are being called before the House Energy and Commerce Committee, and then the joint committees in the Senate, apparently. Mark Zuckerberg is going to be under the hot seat there. I'm going to throw this out to either one of you. It's going to be a jump ball. Whoever answers first gets to go first. Who is got the most to lose by being on this hot seat? Who is going to be the one the most punished, Amazon or Facebook?
Ding. Okay, I'll just go first. I think hands down Facebook in my estimation, in part because Facebook has some real substantive issues that senators are extremely interested in, are very upset about. This balance between privacy and data sharing, clearly it's out of balance, and Zuckerberg said so. And as you see, Mark Zuckerberg did an interview for the first time in a long time. I think it was an exclusive with CNN. And then you saw COO Sheryl Sandberg did an interview this morning with the Today Show.
Oh, I'm so glad you brought it up, because that's really what I want to talk about.
Yeah, and then yesterday with NBC. So there's a charm offensive going on, and so you can tell that Facebook has taken this extremely seriously, and they need to. Amazon less so, only because you got kind of these tweets popping off from President Trump, but there isn't as much substance there, I believe, at least immediately, that threatens Amazon.
You know, one thing, Adam, Amazon, they have a couple things that are tangible. They have their actual content, which they produce, a lot of good content, and then they have the stuff that comes in your mailbox that you order, which is kind of the Internet of Things. You go online, you get something, it comes right to your door, and so that's tangible. Facebook, far less so. It's social media, which is, they got a huge valuation, but not tangible. So yeah, I know you want to talk about Sheryl Sandberg. I agree with what John is saying. Let me just put it that way.
Yeah. Well, I would just say this. We at EFB Advocacy have actually worked on one of these issues a little tangentially. We've represented in the past the National Association of Letter Care Professionals, the folks who
letter
deliver
carriers, yeah.
the letter carriers.
Yeah.
And so what the president has done is he's sort of making what many believe to be baseless charges about Amazon riding the U.S. Postal Service, at a deficit and stealing money from the U.S. taxpayers. And I think that it's been generally accepted that the president has misused some of the numbers that he's quoting, that on an operational basis, the United States Postal Service is actually a profitable entity. They are largely incredibly unprofitable when you factor into their legacy healthcare and
a lot of their pension costs that
pension
Congress
costs,
put
yeah.
upon them.
But specifically speaking about Facebook, I agree with Easton that they're the one who really is in the hot seat. And I know that people are super concerned still to this day about what actually happened in the 2016 election. It's tangential to what Mr. Mueller is investigating. But really what we want to know about now is, to what extent can government get involved, regulate, and make some specific rules that are going to help protect people's privacy. And when John Easton talks about Zuckerberg coming out and doing interviews, doing a call with analysts on the street, and then Sheryl Sandberg this morning in this exclusive interview on NPR, really what they're saying is, we're opening the kimono. We did wrong. We understand that. And they're trying to characterize the conversation that we're going to see next week in the Senate and the House as being, you know what we did wrong? We didn't understand how the negative or bad motivations of bad actors could be used to take our platform and really use it as a weapon. And they're saying that's a failure of our imagination to envision this and to do more about it. But now we know, and now we're going to do a better job. And I think the next question for many of the members on the committees will be, okay, When did you start thinking about this? And can you produce documentation that shows us how you envision these malfeasances and the stealing of stuff? And they might get caught a little bit in their own PR two-step about when it started and when they realized, wow, our product can really hurt people.
There's a couple things I want to say about Facebook. First of all, I'm an avid Facebook user. I'm on there all the time. I show them pictures of my kids. I know I'm not supposed to, but I do because my kids, I like that. I don't know why. I like my mother to see it and blah, blah, blah. Facebook has been under scrutiny. Not only for this, but if you look, there was a story that broke about how they were trying to get access to everyone's health records because they wanted to marry up their kind of analytics with actual health records to figure out what was, if they can get some money out of that. And then it also was revealed that your instant message, text messages through instant messenger of Facebook, they're not private. They're fully accessible by Facebook, and people, if they were under the thought that what they were sending was private, it's not private. Yeah. And so that's a revelation for a lot of folks. And people are a little bit freaked out about Facebook. And Mark Zuckerberg is kind of, he's got this. I think it's going to be interesting to see what he wears, if he wears that obnoxious hoodie or if he actually, tries to act like an adult. But he's also an extraordinarily wealthy man, John Easton. Thinking about this and thinking about social media, how do you think members look at Facebook? My own experience of looking at a member's Facebook page is it's a very dark place where you have all kinds of bots and things like that, come up and people say really nasty things about members of Congress.
That's actually, you just hit the nail on the head. For a member of Congress, social media, particularly, well, not particularly, Facebook, Twitter, they see the incoming. And those who say that if they engage, I've worked with both that don't engage on social media and those that do. Those who do said they can't quit social media. They can't quit looking at all of both the compliments and the criticism. Right. They're addicted to both. And therefore, it does affect them deeply and personally. It just does. Well, it's like going to a county fair and getting hammered by your constituents, yelled at. It can be almost the same feeling.
It's a great example, actually, as people who've been out there and run campaigns the way that you have. It's exactly traditionally how people would hear from the community, good and bad, ugly and pretty. Yeah. And part of our business model at EFB Advocacy is to be able to help connect the substantive policy arguments and education that go on the Hill with the constituents and the people who are being impacted, and let members know exactly how folks are faring and what's going on. And we do that through Facebook a great deal. And we do it for the same reason that other big name brand and advertisers do, because we all self-identify, John, so much about ourselves. We can target to audiences that are meaningful and make it a cost-effective play. I don't have any problem with that.
I don't either. I will say, we have had some problems, though, using some of their stuff and getting. Let's hope that they don't punish us and put us on some sort of algorithm that no one sees this podcast. And that's part of it.
We can take care of no one seeing that all by ourselves.
Yeah, I know, that's a good point. But that is part of the thing. There's not a whole lot of transparency in the algorithms, and you're never quite sure, if it's all fair or if they get to pick winners and losers. And I think that can be part of the frustration. And there's also this effort by the left, especially, to make sure that the right doesn't get a chance to publish its stuff. And there's not a whole lot of censorship of the left. There's plenty of censorship of the right.
And I think the hearings next week, the one in the Senate is a joint hearing between the Senate Judiciary Committee and the Senate Commerce Committee. I just think it's going to be fascinating to see how Facebook prepares for this hearing, and actually how the senators prepare for that hearing. That's Tuesday, and then the House committee hearing is on Wednesday. I just think that is going to be fascinating because how much time will be spent on what happened and really digging in and trying to get answers to that, and how much time is spent on, okay, well, now what are you going to do?
Right.
How are you going to
fix this?
You said you screwed up the balance between privacy and sharing user data. Well, how are you going to get to that balance? My personal opinion is you never get that balance.
Yeah, and anybody who's a Washington hand worth their salt will be advising Mr. Zuckerberg that the questions that they ask are really the political gold for them. You're not going to be in a position to answer these questions in a substantive way. In fact, most of the time we'll be eaten up by posturing and grandiose questions, not by a search for truth or information.
Yeah, and
to come from
Zuckerberg
the
is
other end of the
lucky
table.
if that is the case.
I'm fascinated by the fact that we're talking about Amazon, and I want to turn to Amazon in a couple of seconds, and we're talking about Facebook. We're not talking about Google, who is really the 6 billion pound gorilla,
Yeah.
and was involved in all this stuff as well. And it's amazing to me that they've escaped a lot of the scrutiny. If I'm Mark Zuckerberg, I'm turning to my government affairs guys and saying, "What the heck? Why is this me? What about Google?" That's what I would say. And one other observation about Amazon and Jeff Bezos. Bezos is worth, I think, about $600 billion, now maybe close to $1 trillion. I mean, he's worth a lot of money, and he is putting small businesses out of business. And this is part of what he's been doing with his game plan, and it's actually quite fascinating. And the working conditions of the folks who are doing the Amazon work. I mean, what Bezos wants, he wants to be fully automated. He doesn't really want people doing a lot of this stuff. And the people that do work in these factories and loading all this stuff, they work a lot of hours, and it's tough work. And so I wonder, when Trump is making this attack on Amazon, if this could be, fertile ground. And I do know, talking to other folks out there in Washington, that Amazon is now seen as a much bigger problem for their business model, if you're like a brick and mortar store, especially, than Facebook or Google. And so I'm wondering about how that all plays out within the Washington gang.
I think all of that's fascinating and true, and at the same time, we applaud the disruptive and innovative nature of any business that can change, long-standing paradigms. And then I often turn to a business that John Easton's been interested in, which is not Amazon, but eBay, right? This other great digital commerce site, but in eBay, what you often have is small businesses being able to connect and thrive and survive in an environment that's overpowered by Amazon. There's a lot here. I don't have the solutions to it, but there are a lot of great questions that need to be answered.
Well, what I think is funny, what just came to mind when you were asking that, is that it really is the disruptor angry with the disruptor.
That's right. That's exactly right. So we're going to buy and sell in a couple seconds, but I want to turn our attention to now, really quickly, the fact that we are entering spring season, and which means baseball, and also it also means the golf. We have the Masters on this weekend, which I'm really excited about. So, John Easton, we're talking about spring sports, and we're talking about the Nationals, and I'm a little worried. I'm a little worried they don't have enough pop in their lineup. I'm a little bit worried that Daniel Murphy's got to come back. I'm a little bit worried that Montero did not call a good enough game. I'm a little bit worried about, but I'm really worried about Ryan Zimmerman because he didn't do spring training, and he made a big show of not doing spring training, and he's too big for spring training, and he's too old for spring training. If you're too old for spring training, it seems to me that you're too old to play baseball. And I know he's a cultural icon. I know he's our first draft choice, but dude, you got to perform. If you're not going to do spring training, you got to perform.
Well, and it's not just for your own body and all that muscle memory and game situations, but it's your team too.
Right.
You gotta be in there with your team. And I've found in sports that a lot of times if somebody steps away and says for whatever reason I can't practice, that does affect the chemistry a bit. Ryan Zimmerman's probably my favorite player on the Nationals. Because he's the cornerstone. He was like really the first guy, first star, and I love the guy, and I love all of his efforts for MS in honor of his mom, and I love him to death. I wasn't too keen on this decision either, and I was at the game yesterday as well, the home opener, and very disappointed that bases loaded. He put that blooper up there. It is the 7th game of the season, and they won their first 5, 5, 5?
Four.
First 4 games. I'm sorry. So
Now they're 4-3.
we've got 162 games to play. So
I know it's early in the season,
early.
but Adam, you have any thoughts? I know.
No, I don't. I have no thoughts.
Let me say one last thing about golf, and I just want to make this observation because you have Jordan Spieth and Rory McIlroy, and then you have Phil Mickelson, and then you have this great comeback by Tiger Woods. And this is one of the rare moments that you're going to see all four of these guys compete and compete hard. And it's a special moment. So if you have a chance, please watch the Masters this weekend. It's going to be fantastic golf.
And not only that, but a lot of you who tune into the Masters could not have missed the coverage of Tony Finau,
Right.
who dislocated his ankle on Wednesday on a practice round. Well, it was actually it was a competition. It was a par three competition. He made a hole in one, runs down the fairway in celebration, starts jogging backwards, dislocates his ankle, and in front of everybody, all the galleries and everything, he pops it back in himself.
Wow.
He said on a pain scale, 1 to 10, it was 10 for sure. and he jogged back to the tee box and he was actually a co-leader for a while in yesterday's round. I couldn't believe it. I think he finished second or third in yesterday's round. Phenomenal. And the guy is so well spoken. I just became a fan very quickly.
And I love that ESPN's covering this much more extensively than the old days, and I think it's fantastic. Adam Belmar, we're going to get you in the conversation here because you don't care about baseball or golf, and we're going to ask, what are you buying or selling today?
That is a great question. I am very interested at the moment in thinking about the legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King. We've had remembrances this week, 50th anniversary, and one of the things that I'm buying is history and context. And when I say that, I mean for us here in Washington, D.C., people are helping to tell the story of what happened directly after Dr. King's assassination and the riots that ravaged our city. It was before I was born. I'm not as old as either of these two gentlemen here.
Thank you very much.
Or wise.
Mm-hmm. But I think that when we have days like this, weeks like this, it's worth for all of us to take a second to read and think about what we can learn about what's happened in the past and how we can avoid problems like that in the future. And so I'm very sort of up with the memory of Dr. King at the moment and encourage people to think about how it's impacted all of our lives.
John Easton.
I'm going to go in the same vein, a little bit of a walk down memory lane, and it's a little bit about coaching. I'm buying coaching because John brought up that we are starting the spring season of baseball, and for me it's softball because I coach my youngest daughter's softball team, and have been for a number of years now. And I think that the walk down memory lane is because my dad coached me. And this is actually his birthday. He passed away 2 years ago.
Oh, happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Dad. And I just think what he taught me was getting involved with kids like this, coaching kids, leading kids, is a real noble effort. And the rewards are endless. He was right. I love it. It's not always, sometimes it's frustrating, but it's a lot of fun, and it's just a great thing to be involved with.
I am buying and selling. I'm going to first start with selling. I'm selling April snow. I want to get rid of it. It all must go. We were driving from Chicago back through the mountains, back to Washington, D.C., and we had like 3 snow squalls. What's up with that? No more April snow. It drives me bonkers. Buying. I'm buying Catholic University sports athletics. Notre Dame won this Frozen Four. They won the women's Final Four, and Villanova won the Final Four basketball, NCAA basketball men's. Good on you. For all the Catholic schools out there, good on you. I think it's great that they won. They are far outnumbered in resources, far outnumbered in personnel, but they come and they compete, and they did great. And so congratulations to the Irish and to the Wildcats. And for that, let me just say thank you for listening to the EFB, the Fear Theory podcast, brought to you by EFB. EFB means...
Excellent for business.
Yes.